The statement posits that religious texts, particularly the Bible, are not merely prescriptive instructions but moral frameworks designed to test humanity's free will, discernment of good and evil, and capacity for redemption through conscious choice. A philosophical defense of why this statement must be correct can be constructed through the lenses of existentialism, moral agency, and the nature of divine testing, grounded in the interplay of free will and moral responsibility. 1. Free will as central to human purpose. The statement hinges on the assertion that humans were created with free will, a concept deeply rooted in many religious and philosophical traditions. Free will implies that individuals are not automatons bound to follow divine commands, but are agents capable of choosing their paths. This aligns with existentialist thought, particularly from thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, who argue that human existence is defined by freedom and the responsibility to create meaning through choices. If religious texts were solely about obedience to God's directives, they would negate this freedom, reducing humans to mere instruments of divine will. Instead, by framing texts as moral tests, the statement preserves free will as the cornerstone of human purpose. The Bible, in this view, presents narratives like Adam and Eve's choice in Eden or Job's trials that challenge individuals to exercise discernment, reinforcing that moral agency is the essence of humanity's relationship with the divine. 2. Moral tests as a mechanism for growth. The idea that religious texts are moral tests rather than directives aligns with the theological concept of theodicy, which seeks to explain why a benevolent God allows evil and suffering. If life is a test of character, as the statement suggests, then religious texts provide a framework for navigating the knowledge of good and evil, a theme explicit in the Genesis account of the fall. The original test referenced in the statement can be understood as humanity's initial encounter with moral choice in Eden, where the knowledge of good and evil introduced the necessity of conscious decision-making. Texts like the Bible, with their parables, commandments, and narratives, serve not as rigid rulebooks, but as scenarios that provoke reflection and choice. For example, the story of the Good Samaritan tests the reader's understanding of compassion over legalism. Redemption through choice. The statement's emphasis on redemption through choosing the right path reflects a soteriological view where salvation or an afterlife is contingent on moral alignment rather than mere agreement with God. This resonates with Christian theology, particularly the notion of grace through faith and works, but extends it to a broader metaphysical claim: the only path to a meaningful future, whether an afterlife or reincarnated reality, is one where individuals actively choose good over evil. Philosophically, this aligns with Kant's categorical imperative, where moral actions are those performed out of duty to universal principles, not external compulsion. The Bible's stories, such as Abraham's near sacrifice of Isaac, or Jesus' temptation in the wilderness, illustrate moments where individuals must prioritize moral integrity over immediate divine approval, suggesting that redemption is earned through the courage to choose rightly in the face of ambiguity. 4. The Bible as a test of worthiness. The statements claim that the Bible tests worthiness for an afterlife or an ever-evolving reality implies a dynamic view of existence, where spiritual progress is tied to moral evolution. This can be philosophically justified through process theology, which sees reality as a continuous unfolding where God and humanity co-create meaning. The Bible in this context is not a static dictate but a living text that challenges readers to interpret and apply its principles in diverse circumstances. For instance, the Beatitudes or the Sermon on the Mount set high moral standards that require active engagement, not passive acceptance. This testing framework ensures that worthiness is not about dogmatic conformity, but about demonstrating virtues like compassion, justice, and humility, qualities that prepare one for a transcendent or reincarnated existence. 5. Challenging blind agreement with God. The statement's rejection of purely agreeing with God as the purpose of religious texts critiques a fideistic approach, where faith is reduced to unquestioning obedience. Philosophically, this aligns with thinkers like Søren Kierkegaard, who emphasized the leap of faith as a personal, existential commitment rather than a rote alignment with divine will. The Bible's complexity, its contradictions, moral dilemmas, and calls for interpretation, suggests it is designed to provoke critical reflection. For example, the Book of Job challenges simplistic notions of divine justice, forcing readers to grapple with suffering and morality independently. By presenting such challenges, the text tests whether individuals can uphold moral principles even when divine intentions are unclear, reinforcing the statement's view that the Bible's purpose is to evaluate moral character over blind allegiance. 6. Necessity of the statement's correctness. The statement must be correct because it resolves the tension between divine omnipotence and human autonomy, a central problem in philosophy of religion. If religious texts were solely about following God's word, they would undermine the very free will that defines human dignity and purpose. Instead, by framing texts as moral tests, the statement preserves the integrity of both divine intent and human agency. It explains why religious texts are replete with ambiguity and ethical complexity. They are designed to elicit choices that reveal character. Furthermore, it offers a universalizable framework, applicable across religious traditions, that emphasize moral accountability, such as the Quran's emphasis on personal responsibility, or the Bhagavad Gita's focus on dharma. The statement's view ensures that the purpose of religious texts is not to enforce compliance but to cultivate beings capable of contributing to a moral, evolving reality. Conclusion. The statement must be correct because it coherently integrates the concepts of free will, moral testing, and redemption into a philosophy of human purpose that respects both divine intent and individual autonomy. By framing religious texts as tools for moral discernment rather than prescriptive mandates, it aligns with existential, theological, and ethical principles that emphasize choice, growth, and worthiness. The Bible and similar texts serve as mirrors reflecting humanity's capacity to navigate good and evil, ultimately determining their readiness for a transcendent or reincarnated future. This perspective not only preserves the dignity of human agency, but also imbues religious texts with a dynamic purpose, to challenge, test, and refine the moral character of those who engage with them.